I know what it's like to cross borders. I know what it's like to be having fingerprints to be deported because I got busted. I know what it's like to have the fear of being sent back home because you don't belong here. But I'm grateful to a grandmother who showed up at the airport and claimed me, bringing all the paperwork to say, these are my grandchildren. I want them to stay here with me.
Joining us from North Carolina is Emily Francis. Emily is a nationally recognized EL teacher at Concord High School in Concord, North Carolina. She is the author of If You Only Knew, Letters from an Immigrant Teacher, and Millie's Journey, the picture book series. She's talked at a few of our webinars. It is always so inspiring. I am just so thrilled that she's kicking off our conference today. Welcome, Emily.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for having me. It's always such a pleasure to join a community who is gathered together to uh, like get tools and prepare ourselves to support immigrant students. I was born in Guatemala, and so as an immigrant, it's just such a joy to join you here today, not just to share my story with you, but what excites me the most is that it allows me to go beyond the immigrant successful story, but share with you about supporting immigrants in challenging times by doing the education, the identity, and the language part that our students need in order to be successful. So, when I think about challenges for students, here am I thinking about something negative, right? You might think, oh, I need to remove this challenge from the student. But what I want to challenge you today is to not look at challenges with a deficit mind. I would like for you to look at challenges with a growth mindset. Using these challenges and using the power that we have to identify these challenges to empower students, to encourage students, to help students grab these challenges per se and use them to become successful individuals. And when I mean successful individuals, I don't mean being on Ellen DeGeneres like I was. Just kidding. Just had to say that out there. But becoming a successful individual to me is someone who can function out in society, someone who can take what was called challenges and use them to impact society. So we're going to start by doing this because in order for us to identify our students' challenges, we need to know our students. We need to know their stories. We need to understand where they come from, where their experiences are, where they've been, their languages, their religion, their assets, everything about them is going to help us identify challenges in order to provide that support. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my slides away and I want you to see me because I don't want you to see labels. I don't want you to see challenges. I don't want you to see barriers. I want you to see me, a human being coming to you, sharing a personal story. And where your job is right now as a listener is capturing what this person is telling you and being able to identify how these challenges per se or these experiences can help this immigrant be successful individual here in the US. So I'm going to share my story with you. And if you're one of those genius people who can listen and grab everything and later on be able to share, well, you have added. But if you need to take notes, grab your little notes, your little pencil, and take notes as I share with you because you are going to go in the chat and share where do you see identity, culture, and strength on this person who is about to enter the school system here in the US. So I was born in Guatemala. I lived in Guatemala for 15 years. I am the oldest of five children. And really, as a Latino culture, it's not that I had to, but I was given the opportunity to help my mother as the oldest with taking care of the kids, taking care of the household. I learned how to cook. I learned how to do all sorts of great activities at home to entertain my siblings in order to help my family survive. My mother was out in the market selling oranges while I was at home taking care of the kids. I learned how to manage money, how to cook meals, tortillas, frijoles, and just fed my siblings while my mother was out working. I had different roles too. If my mother was at home doing this and taking care of the kids, I went to school. I learned how to read. I learned how to write. I learned how to do presentations, and golly, I was good at it. I loved education. In fact, I and my mother knew that being educated and being able to go to school and reading and writing was going to get me out of that poverty cycle. So she encouraged that, and I knew that I had to do that. Hey, I learned how to do family business too. If I was not at home taking care of the kids and if I was not at school learning, I was at the market. And at a very early age, I learned how to do business transactions. Here am I sitting at the market with my oranges, and don't you dare touch them if you're not going to buy them. I was so good at it and so responsible too. Not only I knew how to do the business transaction, but I would be brave enough to pick up that basket and go from door to door. Would you buy my oranges? Would you buy my oranges? I needed to come home with money so my mother can then do it all over again. And this is how I lived for 12 years until my mother said, "All right, Emily, you're staying home with the kids here in Guatemala. I'm going to go to the US." And as an immigrant, an undocumented immigrant, she came here to the US, cleaning toilets, cleaning houses, while I stayed back in Guatemala with three sisters and a brother in a little shack that we built in a neighbor's backyard. And I took care of them the best that I could for 2 years. Golly, I was glad I knew how to write and how to read because that was the only way my mother and I communicated. I have every single handwritten note that she sent me. "Emily, I just cleaned up your house. I just cleaned the toilet. I'm doing this for you. I'm working hard for you." And I knew she was here doing what she had to do so I can survive in Guatemala. But the plans changed. Instead of her going back home to her kids, she paid a smuggler to bring me here to the US. She grabbed every penny she had saved and paid that money in exchange of a promise. So as a 15-year-old, I packed my backpack with essentials. And when you asked an immigrant, "What did you put in that backpack?" Every one of us has a story to tell. Every one of us remembers the time when that backpack was packed. I walked into that shack thinking, "What do I need to put in this backpack that is going to help me through a journey, through countries, through borders, through unknowns?" And that backpack was filled with every single note my mother has sent me with promises that I was going to be different and successful. That backpack was packed with all the pictures because I knew I was going to have a new life in the US. And I needed to show my children, "Look, I jumped in creeks in Guatemala. I cooked. I rode a bike. I lived it in my home country for 15 years." And that backpack, I cannot explain to you the power that gave me for this little immigrant to get into a vehicle with an unknown and two little girls next to me as we took the journey to come here to the US. I know what it's like to cross borders. I know what it's like to be having fingerprints to be deported because I got busted. I know what it's like to have the fear of being sent back home because you don't belong here. But I'm grateful to a grandmother who showed up at the airport and claimed me, bringing all the paperwork to say, "These are my grandchildren. I want them to stay here with me." And so at 15 in 1994, I began my journey here in the US as an immigrant. Oh my gosh, I'm 15 years old, student with interrupted education because I had sixth grade level education going into a high school. Now, this is where I want to go back and have and heard from you. Were you able to identify culture, identity, and strength? Were you able to see beyond the labels? Go into the chat and tell me, "Emily did not write empty." She arrived carrying, and I want you to tell me what is it that you see that is valuable that is going to help this 15-year-old be successful here in the US. And I'm looking at the chat to see how you were able to identify all the assets of culture, identity, and strength. So have at it. Let us look, see what you have to say. Courage, yes. Dreams, love, ganas, gracias. Resilience, of course. Yes. Carrying resilience. Oh, that word just comes up. Yes. Focus, faith, self-determination, brave. Oh my gosh, the words keep coming up. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. See, the problem is that many of us, if not just all of us, including teachers individuals who work with immigrants, they see us with all of these problems, with all of these challenges, and they identify us based on these problems instead of identifying us with what we already have. That is the problem. So we need to work on identity. Many people think that knowledge is English proficiency. Well, she doesn't speak English. She doesn't have any knowledge. So let's challenge that. Newcomers arrive with tremendous strength and they are invisible. Our job is to make them visible. Many will see these challenges as something that have to be removed. I'm challenging you today not to think about that. These challenges are for us to take them and use them to be successful. We're not empty when we come here as immigrants. We arrive carrying knowledge, culture, experiences, dreams. You laid it all out in the chat. But what happens when they confuse language and proficiency? They begin to label us. And labels become identity. And that is a huge problem that we have here for our students. Let's look at language. Language gave me access, but it did not determine my worth. Yes, I had to learn English. I went into Martin Van Buren. I didn't speak a word of English, just the word okay. But I was excited. I wanted to learn. I wanted to go to college. I wanted to be a teacher. But of course, the English language was a barrier in that moment. But I started learning English. I needed to make sure that I was learning the language to access the credits that I needed. It was 3 in the morning, and I was sitting in the kitchen table translating everything. I wanted to prove myself. I wanted to prove that there was some knowledge in there, not sitting in the back of the classroom, being ignored, not being part of everything that was happening in the classroom. See, let's think about equity and access. And education does not simply transfer knowledge. Education transforms possibilities. And that's what was happening to me as I was sitting in those classrooms. I was growing in possibilities of becoming the successful individual I wanted to. So I arrived in this country as an English language learner, but I'm here today to tell you that the problem that we have is that as hard as we work as immigrants and as deep as we go into putting aside our challenges per se, we sometimes do not give the school systems what they ask for. And so I ended up being a high school dropout in 1998. You can see it right there. That was my last day of school. I learned the language. I passed every test. Of course, I did not pass American history. And just because I learned the language doesn't make me successful, because right here, what you see is an individual who has no success at all. This is what failure looks like. And I tell my students, I have this picture in my classroom. Being a cashier and working a job like this does not make you a failure. What makes you a failure is walking out of a school campus that never identified your courage, your power, your assets, your culture, your language. No, they took all of that and shoved it all down as deep as I could in my life. And I created an identity was not my own and became a dysfunction individual. See, that's what we do to our students when we try to put them all in a box and thinking that today's challenges apply to every single individual. Or I think this is a challenge and I don't dig deep into our students' stories. I challenge you today to stop thinking that you know what's best for you students and start asking your students, what do you need? Where are you in the moment? How can I support you? What resources can I provide to you? Because this little individual here would have loved to have a social worker, to have a teacher, to have an ESL person, a counselor, a principal, someone to have picked up the phone or knocked on my door and said, Emily, here's some resources for you. This is how I can empower you. You don't have to drop out. You don't have to be a failure. You don't have to. And that's what we have as educators. As people and individuals who work with immigrants, we hold the power to help students see that failure and dysfunction is not what they are meant to. But we can't do that unless we listen. We can't do that unless we identify assets and culture and identity like Angie Power did. It was 2004 after years and years of failure and walking down the streets desiring to be more than what I was in that moment. I met Angie Power, who needed a teacher assistant. I was willing to clean floors. I was willing to mop the floors in the hallways of schools. So applying for Cabarrus County schools was my way in. Never in a million years thought that Angie Power was going to be an individual that is so culturally competent, that's so beyond my challenges. Yes, she wrote the challenges. Yes, she listened. Yes, she identified the crisis that I was going through, but she didn't think about removing those from my life. She thought about using my challenges. She thought about using my experiences. She thought about using my deficits in that moment and push me to be the best of the best. The right educational opportunities changed my trajectory. I went from scanning groceries and feeling like a failure to now sitting in a classroom where I impact students, teachers, administrators, and so on and so forth. Why? Not because my challenges were removed, not because my challenges were labels and gave me an identity, but because I had to go back and dig deep into my roots. I would challenge you today to think about someone who changed the trajectory of your life. What did they see in you that you never saw before? Because I can tell you, her name is Angie. Go into the chat. 1, 2, 3, tell me. Can you think of that person that was able to see beyond your labels? Can you think of that person that was able to blur victory into your life and assets and culture and identity and power into your life? I can think of that person. And I'm grateful that she was able to help me see those challenges and grow beyond what I thought that I could be. I thought that I could just go into a classroom and start teaching. I was selling my oranges and I saw a teacher come out with a bunch of students behind them like little ducklings. Oh, I want to do that. In that moment, I wanted to be that person that tells students what to do. And I kind of do. I tell students what to do. But I do more than that. I'm a global leader. Like I do that. I write books and teachers are impacted. I share classrooms with teachers and together we transform students. I look into students' lives and I see their problems that others see, or their deficits, or their challenges that others see, and I empower them to take those challenges, to take those problems and labels, and use them to empower themselves. I love working with families. Global leadership doesn't have to be going out to other countries to impact. Global leadership can be next door. That one mama that doesn't know how to fill out an application and needs help. That one parent that doesn't know where to get the resources for their children. And I, as an educator, have those resources to empower. Leadership begins when we use our story and challenges to serve others. I arrived in this country as an English language learner. Today, I stand before you as an educator, an author, a mentor, a leader, an advocate, not because my journey was easy. I just told you what my journey was like, but because people invested in my challenges and potentials before I could even see it myself. My story is not all about me, it's about becoming those possibilities that we have. That is how we advance knowledge. That is how we develop leaders. When we honor languages, when we value who our students are, when we teach them the English language to access those resources, that's the educational part. Are we using our experiences, our knowledge, and our positions to create opportunities for others? Do you have experiences? Do you have knowledge that you think what's best for your students? Perhaps you do. But my challenge for you today after this presentation is take time to listen. Take time to listen to students, learn what their stories are, listen to their experiences, jot down, take notes, and learn to tell those to your that person that you're listening to. We love listening to someone telling us what our assets are. Anyone with a diverse background such as my own is like music to our ears. It's like refreshing cool water when someone with a different walk of life comes to us and tell us, I see your assets. I see your resources. I see what you can do, what you can become. Thank you so much for letting me share my story. This is my contact information. I am in all sorts of platforms. All of these are professional platforms, and I would love to stay connected with you. I will share my slides so you have this presentation. And thank you so much for letting me share here with you. And if you have any questions that I can answer, you can either put them up in a chat or email me or contact me via social media, and I will be happy to share with you. Again, thank you for letting me share today, and I hope you have a fabulous learning day today. Not learning to take away challenges, but learning how to use these challenges to support your students.